All right,
Hi.
we're here.
Yeah.
I can hear everyone, so I'm going to take these off now so I don't
Awesome.
have to hear us in stereo.
Awesome.
We're-
Welcome.
Yes, welcome everyone out there. So you have no idea what to expect. I don't think we do either.
Right.
But if you feel so inclined, you can go like right down there somewhere and hit that little share button. And that will help build our audience.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to do. I think we have a pretty good idea of what we're trying to get after, which is kind of building the community, let people understand a little more about yoga.
Yep.
And I think that that's probably a great place to begin because I think all three of us got to yoga in very different ways.
We sure did. Definitely.
Who wants to go first?
Miley's, you go first. Oh, gosh. Man, you know, so first of all, I'm just so honored to be here with these two because this is such a big part of why I love yoga so much is the people you get to do it with. And by it, I mean yoga. So it means something different to everyone. And it's true that it really meets you where you're at. And yoga has played such a big part of my life for so many years. You know, I hate to start at the when I was 3 years old story, but is when I started ballet. It was my first ballet class. And I can remember the excitement of moving my body and being with other humans doing the same thing at the same time. And there was some magic about that.
Sure.
You know? And once you dive into that, it's kind of an experience that you always want to come back to. And you crave that. That motion creates emotion. And so that's carried with me for so long. When I went to college, I remember there were, like yoga classes offered. And at the time I was super hot into Rodney Yee. Have you guys done the Rodney Yee?
That was the first yoga I did, video.
Rodney, if you're watching right now.
Yeah, you're the one.
You're
buddy.
it. You're it. You started it.
That's so funny. That's so funny. We've never talked about that.
No, we haven't.
Totally,
That's so
totally
many people, Rodney.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is incredible. Because how did that even happen? Like, we probably need to have him on the show to figure out, no, it's like.
He popularized it in some sense, yeah.
And made it accessible. Because it's like, there's a lot of fear, I think, going to your first yoga class in a studio.
Sure.
It's like, are people going to judge you? What's going to happen? Am I going to be on my head? I mean, who knows? Yeah. What's going to happen?
Most likely.
And so he gave this opportunity for people to be exposed to this genre of fitness. But you start doing the movements and something happens. Something happens deeper than that. And so I kept with that and eventually did go to my first class at a live studio. And I have a great story about that. There was an opportunity in class we were in downward facing dog, and there was a chance to kick up into handstand. And I'm like, dude, I'm in this, like whatever's happening. So in downward dog, and the teacher.
Do you do handstands?
I know.
Okay. So you're not like one of those people who can just like walk on their hands. Okay.
Not at all. So don't if I'm out in public, don't be like, hey, pop up and do a handstand because it's gonna be bad for everyone.
I have a picture for that.
You sure do. So I'm in downward facing dog and she comes behind me, right? Which as a teacher maybe isn't the best positioning. So I don't know if she was a new teacher. She's like, go ahead and kick up.
Boom.
Kicked her right in the button. Which I learned this about boxing, right?
Yeah.
This is
Did you knock her out?
the knockout spot. I didn't. I almost did. She fell to the ground.
Oh my God.
Swear to God. And I was traumatized from the whole experience.
Oh, wow.
Because I felt really bad.
Sure.
Because I kicked her right in the tuchus. Nope, this is your tuchus.
Yeah. Right in the face.
Right in the face.
Right in the chin.
So that happened. But I didn't give up on yoga classes after that.
But you never went back to that studio.
I did. I sure did. I went back. And I felt really bad for her, but it was really nice, and my personality smoothed over any problems. So I kept going back to yoga, and there's always something there. Well, eventually I actually found Core Power in Fort Collins.
Mhm.
And I met Patty, which, hi Patty, if you're watching.
Hi. She's one of the 5 people maybe watching.
I think
4.
she
You
could
just
be.
lost somebody already.
And I started doing their hot power fusion class. And there was just something magic about being in the studio space, and you couldn't be interrupted. There was nothing else to do at that moment. And I ended up later getting pregnant and having a baby. And after that feeling I craved it in my body. And so after I had my daughter, I kept going back and kept being in class. And it's just so weird how the physical part attracts you, and then the mental part starts to blossom after that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I found yoga.
Awesome.
And you just recently started dancing again.
I did.
Yeah.
So, because I danced my whole life. And then when I was about 8 months pregnant, I stopped because I couldn't jump.
Why?
I mean, it was just like, it was pretty bad. So yeah, I stopped, and Jana is so sweet and supportive. And I was like, there's this dance class nearby, and I don't know. And she's like, you should go do that ballet thing. And so, yeah, last week I hopped back on the bar, as we say in the biz. No one says that. So yeah.
That's cool.
And how was it? How did it feel?
It blew my mind. Yeah. But what's fascinating is because of the yoga, I could do it.
Yeah.
It did something different in my body. And oddly enough, in hot yoga, we've been talking a lot about the engagement of your bandhas and, zipping it up, starting at your anal lock.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're only 10 minutes in, but you guys already get to hear
We
about
already heard anal.
Wow.
lock.
It's a real thing.
I believe it. Yeah. I have no doubt.
And so that engagement changed everything really
Yeah.
about my dance, because when you can engage starting at the base of your pelvis and find these different parts of your body, my balance was unlike any I've ever experienced in all my years of dance. So,
Sure.
yeah.
That's cool.
Crazy.
Which, Ken, I think, you've had some experience with anal locks and hot yoga. So I'd love
That's a
to.
great transition.
I know. I'd love to hear about your journey.
So we're PG-13.
I mean, it's a technical term.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I started with Rodney, and honestly, it was. So we had a video that I don't think it was a VHS. I think it was a DVD. So it wasn't that long ago.
Fancy.
But it gave me it was very relaxing, right? And so that's what I associated with yoga.
Yep.
And relaxing is not really my strong suit. I don't know if you would get that from me, but it's just not which probably means I need to do it more, but it just never, it didn't really click with me. I was like, oh, I could see how this could be useful for some people, but it didn't connect with me.
Yeah.
And then I started doing because I knew that I needed some sort of meditative practice. And so I started doing it over at the Fort Collins Club, probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something. And I started going fairly regularly, but it was very, it was just kind of, it soothed that part of having to have that relaxation and meditation, but it didn't challenge me. And I don't mean that there weren't things that I couldn't do, because there definitely were, but I just didn't, when I got out of there, I wasn't like, whew, wow.
Washed clean.
Yeah. No, I was just kind of like, all right,
Yeah.
that was cool.
What kind of classes were you doing?
I don't even know. They weren't even flow classes. They were just go into this pose. I don't know what that is.
Hatha?
Sure.
Yeah, maybe.
And but it was good because it gave me that kind of base, but it also somewhat turned me off a little bit, because it was that same it's not really giving me what I want. And that's coming from a guy who did a bunch of triathlons, beat up his body a lot and ran a lot and just did a lot of kind of extreme athletics that I couldn't do anymore because I had physically hurt myself. So that was the other part, is that I had blown up my Achilles, and I had had surgery on it. I couldn't run. And the only thing that helped was yoga. Like the only thing that got my ankle to not hurt. PT didn't work. None of the stuff that, and you know, my doctor, she was great. She was like, don't do surgery, but your heel's going to hurt forever. And I'm like, no, you gotta, like, I can't do that. Because I couldn't run. I couldn't even run after my kids in the backyard. And so I got the surgery and I went through PT and it still hurt. Like it still didn't. And she's like, yeah, you'll never run again. Like,
What?
Yeah. She was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. You're not. It's not going to happen.
For those of you who don't know Ken, I mean, he's an athlete. I mean, he wants that challenge, and I'm sure when she told you that, did it make you want to run more?
No, I was just like, okay, I guess I'm not going to run anymore.
Okay.
Like I literally, I was like, I guess that part of my life is over.
Mm.
Yeah, it just, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? Just being able to like go and do stuff with my kids was more important than whether I was going to be able to go and run a half marathon or whatever.
Right.
And so I did. So I went through that, but it still wasn't kind of. And then the whole time in my ear, I had this friend of mine, Jim Finley, which I'm sure you're not watching, Jim, but I know you're on Facebook. Maybe I'll tag you in the post.
There you
You
go.
can see it. He kept telling me, and he was a avid long distance runner, marathoner. And I've known him forever. Mary and him went and did half Ironman in California together. Like he's been a friend of ours. Yeah, a friend of ours forever. And he's like, body got so beat up by running, and he's like, Bikram yoga. That's where it's at. And I was like, and I'm like limping around. I got a cast on. And he's like, Bikram, go to Bikram. And he probably told me that for 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, and I finally went, and I was like, this, like, way too hard. Just, I mean, I came out of there and I was like, what just happened? And they had a really good way of kind of luring you in. Like they're really nice to you in the beginning, which is a good thing, and like very welcoming. And then it was like, as they got to know you, it was like, like more of this, more of that.
Same class.
Yeah, at the same studio, and it was.
Tell people that have never been to a Bikram class, like what happens when you go there. How long is it?
So it's 90 minutes. It's at least 103, but usually 105. I mean, I've seen it up to like 111 in there. Where
Degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes, degrees Fahrenheit, and very humid. I don't know what the humidity is supposed to be at, and I think once we have Kyle on, he's like the Bikram expert.
Yes.
He can probably give
Kyle
you
will be on Friday.
on Friday. So if you don't get all your Bikram answers here, which you definitely won't, he will hopefully have the answers. But the thing that was interesting, and I think you guys have both done Bikram, right?
Well,
yes.
I mean, we do our Pod Hot, of course, but we've done a traditional Bikram class taught by Danielle Michael, one
Hi,
of our
Danielle.
teachers. Hi, Danielle. Because she was Bikram trained also.
Okay.
So she taught us as a team builder at Yoga Pod a 90-minute. She used the traditional dialogue.
Yep.
And it
Japanese
was
ham sandwich.
Japanese ham sandwich.
The whole
Push
thing.
until
So
it
here's-
hurts. You know.
Here's the thing. So the people that have never been to a Bikram class or know what that's about. So there was a dude, Bikram, came over to Hollywood and started teaching hot yoga. So he really did something interesting by creating a process that could be repeated and produced over and over again. So
Like Starbucks.
exactly like Starbucks, there was a recipe for the
Mhm.
experience. So it was a 90-minute script that you memorized, and you threw people in this room for 90 minutes, said the script, pushed them, and so that's
There's not
the
a lot,
setting.
and there's not a lot of like in one of the things I like about Yoga Pod is, and this is not a Yoga Pod advertisement, but I'm just saying, like, one of the things that I really like is that I've never had somebody come over and be like, no, this is the way.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's always like, do what feels comfortable. If like, and part of me also is like, yeah, if you want to wuss out, like you can go and do
You have
whatever.
permission.
You have
Yeah.
permission to go do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like that's not really in my makeup to do that, but I know that that's available. Whereas there, it's like you can't leave the room. You can't. I mean, it's like it's very kind of militant.
Yes.
But it was also that was very helpful for me
Right.
because I needed that like structure and getting pushed. Whereas, and I don't think that that's true for everyone. Like I took Mary there, and she was like, "What? Like, no."
She told me
I'm not-
about that.
Yeah, like I'm not doing
She's like,
this.
everybody's in their underwear and there's carpet.
Yeah. It was just it's just like, no, I'm not doing this. And I was like, what do you mean? Like this is the best. And it literally like it sounds like somewhat dramatic, but it like in a sense kind of saved my life.
Yeah.
Because it got me into this routine of doing which I hadn't been able to do. I hadn't been able to exercise at all.
Right.
I hadn't been able to go run. I hadn't been able to go. And consequently, since I started that, like I have been able to run.
Really?
Yeah, and I can run.
So you can run again.
About 3 miles. But anything beyond that, it's pretty like my ankle is pretty not great. And I can hike like, I hunt a lot in the hunting season, and so hike. We'll go do 13 miles, and I'll be okay. It's not great, but it'll be okay. So, I mean, it gave me my mobility back.
Yeah.
So, and then I found Yoga Pod, and that's where I've like really feel like I've kind of gotten into a rhythm of things. So
Okay.
no, it's true because because Bikram is so like one thing, and then I'm like, but I like pod flow, vinyasa. I just can't do it. Like I just don't have time in the day. I would love to have time in the day for it, but I just can't bring myself to. I've gone a few times, and I'm like, oh, this is great afterwards, but. Anyway,
But you did do Ashtanga this week.
I did Ashtanga
Yeah.
and not on purpose, I swear. But now I feel like I think I've done every class.
Yeah,
there.
I think you have too.
Yeah. So.
But the cool thing about Ashtanga, because I think one of the things that's attractive for a lot of people for Bikram is that set sequence, where
Yeah.
you're going, you can monitor your progress. And so for you and for a lot of people, I think Ashtanga probably serves that same purpose. It's hard.
For sure.
It's, lots of strength building, but once you start to do those postures, it becomes very meditative. Like it's, the 5 breaths, the fold, all the Sanskrit that Brad uses. And
Hala, hala.
hala hala.
Did you do the hala, hala?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He did the
Did he do
hala.
call and response this morning?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did it all.
Yeah.
And it was so I had no idea what I was walking into.
I love
But it was great, and it
Yeah.
was the same thing. Like I came out of there going, "Oh, I could totally see working this into my practice." Like this being, one of the things that I do. One of the classes I do every week. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Well, before we hear about Jana's journey, I have a story that Brad Hoback told me that I
Okay.
think is pertinent to this. So, for those of you who've not met Brad, he's brilliant.
And
He's
extremely flexible, like
so flexible.
crazy.
Dude,
Um,
like not human.
Yeah.
and he's just a devoted yogi all around, and
Yeah.
he's taught more than 5,000 classes, which when you wrap your head around that, that's a lot of hours.
That's right.
And so, Brad's part of our team, and we just launched our Ashtanga offering this morning. And so
Was that the first of?
that was the
That was the
first.
first one.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So you were at the inaugural.
Oh, wow. Because I
Class.
was like, why do all these people know how to do it? But they've probably done it
They've-
somewhere else.
They've done it
Followed
before.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So, Brad, one day he came to the studio, and, we were just talking about, random things, and we're walking around the studio. He's getting his room set up, and Brad has these like intense blue eyes. Okay. And all of a sudden he stops and he turns to me and he looks into my soul. Okay. Deep in my soul. And I don't know why this happened, but he looks in my soul and he goes, "Have I told you the story about the people chained in the cave?" And I'm like, nope. And he's like, "So there's these men, and they're chained in a cave, okay? And they're chained and they're facing the back wall of the cave. And all I can see is this darkness and there's shadows from the light of the opening of the cave, and it's reflecting onto the back of the wall. and they can't move, they can't do anything. And one day, one of the guys breaks free, and they turn around and they walk out of the opening of the cave. And they see the sun, they see the grass, they smell the air, the flowers, the birds, and it changes everything because they've never seen this. They've never experienced this life, this beauty. And so he goes back into the cave to try to tell, his friends, his cave friends, and they don't understand. They don't understand what's waiting outside, and they're scared, and they're just happy looking at the back of the cave. And he's trying to explain to them what's out there. And then Brad looks even deeper into my soul and was like, that's what yoga's like. You cannot see what has once been seen. And you have to experience it for yourself to truly understand the beauty that is to behold. And then he
Totally true.
shuddered and then went back to talking normal. And so
Awesome.
but that's yoga.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
Totally.
and it's a great analogy because it's like that's once you do it and you understand, the more of life you see, the deeper it gets. And once you experience it, you always want to go back to that place.
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, and it's a never ending learning process. Like you could spend an entire lifetime and not learn everything there is to learn about yoga. And that's what I think is so neat about yogis is we're all lifelong learners. We're constantly reading and talking and communicating and trying to, build this wealth of knowledge. And it's just, you'll never learn it all, not in one lifetime. And that's what makes it so astonishing. It's just nonstop.
Yeah, it seems like just this morning, my mind was blown. I was like,
Yes.
whoa, what are these, I don't know,
Right.
these things. And so it's pretty cool to see that. Before we move on, let's just acknowledge the people that are out there. I can't see anything. Jack.
Hi,
and
Jack. Hi,
Brittany.
Britt. We love you, Britt. Britt went through our teacher training. She was part of our staff for a long time, and she's just a beautiful human being. Jack was a teacher with us who has moved on to the big time.
Who will be a guest on the show.
Who is going to be a guest. He's off sharing his love of yoga with the world. He's just an amazing human. We got Mikey, who is just another incredible person. So he's a CrossFitter and just all around athlete who's found yoga. And he was telling me the other day just how much yoga has changed his body, and the CrossFit people are seeing it and asking him what are you doing? So we just, again, the best part of yoga is the community and the people you get to meet and interact with. So thanks friends for tuning in.
Thanks for being here. If you feel like sharing, or asking questions, we might not get to them right away, but you're more than welcome to ask questions.
Only anal lock related questions will be answered during this episode.
This is actually called the anal lock episode. Hi, Mac.
Oh, Mac, we love you. Mac is just a beautiful soul.
Oh, fun.
And just we're so lucky to have her be a part of our management team, and we have the best group of humans for sure.
Yeah.
It's true.
So
Jana,
Yeah, my
how did
journey.
it all happen? Yes.
Oh, man.
Well, it's interesting because I think back to being a kid, junior high and high school, and I was on the gymnastics team. And when I say I was on the gymnastics team, I was
the water boy.
I was the I was the tallest person on the team, and
that works out well in
so
gymnastics.
that doesn't work out well in gymnastics because the shorter the better. But I did it and I loved it, and it was that body movement that I really appreciated. And I ran distance running. I was in track and field, not the field portion. And I would run the mile and the 2 mile. And so I always really enjoyed that, but I didn't really have any talent.
Oh, yes.
I'm serious. I've thought about it before and what exactly that was. And I think it was a lack of body awareness. I didn't understand what was happening to my body in space. And so in gymnastics, there was a lot of fear. Like there was fear to run to the vault. And like, if anybody's done gymnastics, like you run down like 100-yard strip of carpet, you hit a springboard, and then you hit the vault with both hands, and you do some sort of fancy, Will Ferrell flip off of it. And I was always afraid. So I'd run, I'd gear up, and I'd just like hit my stomach or something. So, and I couldn't tumble. I didn't have enough upper body strength to do the bars. So I did the beam. That was my event. So I could balance. But there was just a lot of fear associated with like going backwards and various things. And so, yeah, I had no body awareness. And so I loved doing these things, but I wasn't very good. And, in high school, like you want to be on the team, but it's so competitive and you never fit in. And I did manage the volleyball team because I didn't make the team. So I I had the
this
will.
Is sad.
I know,
It's getting sad.
But it's like, that's the whole thing. So once I had Mar, I decided
Which is your son.
Yes, sorry, Marley. He's almost 11. I decided to try yoga. So I joined Miramont, and they had yoga. I figured I could do both. And they do this incoming test to like see where your fitness level is at. And I could be remembering this wrong, but I swear she told me I was 36% body fat. Now, I was like 3 months postpartum. I felt like 36% body fat, but that seems excessive. I mean, that would mean I was 1/3 fat, right?
I don't know what the
Yes, that is correct.
Right.
the math.
You are 36%.
So I felt really discouraged, but I was like, great, I'm going to try this class. So I took a class, and I walked in, and I told the teacher, I said, this is my very first yoga class. I've never done it before. And she's like, you'll do great. I'll help you out. This will be fantastic. And I kind of put myself in the back, because I didn't know what I was doing.
It's a good call.
Always.
Yeah, if you've never done yoga before, going up front.
Going back.
Yeah, it is not. I mean, you can do it if you're very confident. But I'm a like back corner person, trying to hide.
It helps you watch, because I think we all learn by watching, right? So you look at the person next to you and whatever,
Exactly.
which hence was part of the downfall. So she never came up to me. She never touched me. She never offered me a modification. She never checked on me. And I mean, there were people in there doing like 1-finger handstands and like, it was
That's the next podcast, is live streaming of us doing that.
It was just a very advanced class. And so I left just feeling discouraged and kind of like, well, I'm not going to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly enough, I didn't. So I didn't do yoga again for 5 years, but in that 5-year time period, I was looking at teacher trainings all the time, constantly. Like, I'm going to teach yoga. I kept telling Ben, I'm going to teach yoga. And he's like, you don't even do yoga. And I'm like, but I'm going to teach it, that's what's happening. And so I started doing CrossFit after Hayden
just like yoga
was born.
Makes sense.
Yeah, after Hayden was born, I started doing CrossFit 4 or 5 days a week, and it was great. I was building a lot of strength. I mean, at one point I was deadlifting like 250 pounds. I could do pull-ups. Like, my body was doing amazing things, and I think that was the draw, is that like seeing that for once in my life I was capable of, pushing my body to a limit. But I was not stretching. I was doing no stretching, no counteraction, and I was doing a front squat. We were maxing. It was PR day. Mikey will know what that means. And as I went down, my right knee dipped in and kind of like tweaked my back. And for 6 months, I couldn't put any weight on my leg.
Ooh.
And so it was awful. Like, I was miserable. Like, I'd already found, I'd found something I wanted to do, and I was feeling really good in my body. And then I couldn't even like sit in the car or get out of the car. I couldn't play with my kids. I couldn't get down on the floor. And I had a baby. And so my sister had been kind of dabbling in yoga, and she came over and she said, here, and she put me in supported bridge, which supported bridge, you take a block, you put it under your sacrum, you lay on it and just kind of let your hips melt. And it was the first time I had relief in 6 months. So from there, I started Googling. Ben would cook dinner and I would Google yoga for sore back or yoga for tight hips or whatever, and just doing little postures here and there on my own. I think my first class back in a studio after kind of practicing it for a while was Gwen at Core Power. Gwen is, I don't know, Gwen like channels
Yeah, she does.
a higher power when she teaches, and that was it's the same as you. Like, I walked into that class and I left and I was like, that's what it's about. Like, I left feeling just out of body, just this whole experience. So I started practicing regularly heated vinyasa at that point, and that was my love. I mean, I just did it all the time. When I found Julia's classes, Julia Tompkins, our lead teacher, that was a game changer for me. Yeah. It was insane. I mean, I could leave, I'd cry on my mat, I'd sweat, it was the whole thing. And then I was like, wow, this is everything. And then I met my lease, and
And then what happened?
It was like the pivotal moment. It's like where everything shifts and changes for the rest of your life. And it's interesting because I too had found Julia's classes.
Yeah.
And, Julia is a powerful teacher, and the movements, force your body to find this energy that might have been trapped in there. And at the time I was deep in corporate America, making deals and, shaking hands and all kinds of stuff, which I love. I love all that, but there's a lot of sitting, a lot of meetings about meetings. And
I love a good meeting about
meetings about meetings.
Meetings about meetings
are the best.
Nothing better.
And so to get on my mat and like forget about all that and having to be like perfect and on stage and just be really vulnerable while still being powerful in Julie's classes was magic. And I looked forward to, I could take 1 week and that's all my schedule would allow at the time. But that, like, I would do whatever it took to, book out that time. And we have some great stories about that. But that'll be in later episodes, so tune in. I'm in Julia's classes, and I taught dance for years and years and years, and once you teach and share with people, that feeling becomes addicting because there's such power to that of sharing something you love, and I wanted to do teacher training, and again, just schedule with babies and husbands, and not husbands, but babies. We had husbands.
That'd be really confusing.
Jenna and I did.
Yeah.
Ken, did not.
I did not.
And so, Julia had spoken to me about teacher training, and it was really interesting because she's like, "Have you ever thought about teacher training?" And it was such a simple question, and I'm like, "Of course I have," Yeah. And that's where I was able to make time and, made the decision to move forward with that. And I'll never forget the first day I met Jana. And Jana, you walk into teacher training and you're nervous. It's like the first day of school. And you're like, oh, am I going to make any friends? Is anybody like me? I don't know what's going to happen. And so you go in and, Jana is just, I don't like her. You can feel her soul, like you can feel her energy, and it's just love. And she's just so sweet. It's just like you want to just bite her. She's so cute and sweet. And so I just saw her and she's just smiling and just so happy. And I was like, oh man, I hope she likes me. I hope she wants to be my friend. And I said something stupid and she laughed at my joke, and I was like, oh yeah, we're in.
Perfect.
And then, that was the beginning, which, how did did we transition to deciding we were gonna change our lives and careers? And
Because I mean, it was like you took your life and like turned it
Both of us.
upside
Yeah.
down. Yeah, both of you.
Both of us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like, rolled the dice, just said,
well, and
hope this
that's-
works.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's legitimately what it was. Like, all right, well,
See how this
taking a
goes.
risk.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, one of the cool things that when you really dive into yoga, you dive into the practice of yoga, the spirituality aspect, the meditation, the philosophical part, you start to learn a lot about the law of attraction, and you find that the creativity that is in all of us, I mean, we're all creative. Yoga like unlocks that and makes you feel this need to create, to fuel your passions and do things that are meaningful to you and that'll make a difference in the world. And I don't remember how we made that pivotal transition. My Lisa and I really bonded over food mostly.
Yep, we sure did.
We love to eat, and if training went over at the lunch hour, like I'm looking at her and I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna lose it. Where are we eating?
Uh-huh.
We'd be texting like, where are we eating today? It's always about where we were gonna eat. And I wish I remembered the
Well,
moment.
So part of that was Joey, my husband, who you guys has been endlessly supportive of this whole venture. He's a talented salesperson and businessman in his own right. And, we've been working, he was actually my employee when I worked at Verizon. So I was a manager there, and he was slinging phones, as we call it.
It's the technical term.
It is the technical term. And I mean, and it was hard. I mean, it was hardcore. Like, retail is intense, and
Oh, yeah.
there's very demanding sales goals and, all these things like that. And so we'd fallen in love there. And, he ended up taking a job at an RV dealership. And it was a risk. I had a good job at Verizon, but we said, let's take a risk. And he'd never been camping, but became their top salesperson like immediately, because sales is about people.
Sure.
And it's about understanding what drives them and, meeting their needs. And so we've always talked about, how do we have our own business? Like, how do we not make money for other people?
Yeah.
Like, how do we make money for ourselves? And so we were looking for an opportunity, and I dug really deep about what really drives me, and it was the yoga, and it was being with people that I loved, and having an opportunity to make people's lives better. And I was like let's do, like, what if we opened a yoga studio and combined our love of business and yoga? And so I started talking about it with Jana, and just we were just throwing ideas around.
I remember it came to me. We were at lunch, and
We're all good.
I looked at you, and so here's my Lise. She's not your typical yogi. Like, she's always like beautiful with her hair and her makeup, and like she drives her nice black car, and like it's great because she's such a yogi. But like, if somebody were to look at her from the outside perspective, it wouldn't necessarily, she fits that bill of what we're trying to show here.
Totally. But yeah, I think that's the piece, right? Like, I don't want to interrupt your story,
No,
but
that's
that's like it is that there isn't a typical or the stereotypical, right? The stereotypical yogi is like 1 in 1,000 of people that practice yoga.
And that's the whole goal of
And there's
what we're
nothing
trying
wrong
to
with
do
that
here.
either.
No,
Like,
not at
that's-
all.
Yeah.
But I'm just not there.
But it is a stereotype that a yogi is a certain kind of person. And so I was attracted to like her just being herself, being so confident in who she was, yoga or no yoga. And so we were at lunch, and I said, you should, because my Lise has this air about her where she can just do anything. And I looked at her, I said, you should open a yoga studio and I'll run it. And that was that moment where it pivoted, and
That's cool.
Yeah, it was neat.
It was neat. And so, we started brainstorming, because I think any good idea comes from just throwing out ideas and,
Yeah.
and seeing what sticks to the wall.
Sure.
And so we started just, fantasizing about all these amazing things that were going to happen, right?
Sure.
And Julia had mentioned, so it's kind of fun, Jack, I'm glad that you're on as well, because Jack and Julia had taught together at the same place. And Jack had told Julia, have you ever heard of YogaPod? And, Jack had taught in Boulder at the mothership, we call it, the YogaPod, the original YogaPod out of Boulder, who's run by Jerry and Nicole Weinholt, who are just such incredible magic people. Like they're unique human beings who it's hard to believe that they're real, but they are. I mean, they are. They're just so special, and they're just so loving. And so they had started this and started franchising, and Jack was like, Julia, have you heard of YogaPod? Julie's no. And Jack taught at the Boulder YogaPod, and he's like, they treat their teachers so well. It's just, they really care about the students. They really care about the employees. And so when I started talking to Julia about the whole idea of us opening a studio, she's like, have you ever heard of YogaPod? And she's like, well, Jack told me about it. And
she hadn't even been there.
she'd never been there.
That's great.
And so it was just this weird, like the universe conspired to educate us about this. And so we started doing research about yoga studios, which, you guys, the business of yoga is a fascinating one.
I can only imagine.
It's unlike any other business that you can imagine, because the product has to be repeated over and over again 10 times a day
Mhm.
by individual teachers. And I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to it. And so researching it was fascinating. And so we started, looking into franchising options with
Mhm.
YogaPod. And it's a young franchise. And so I connected with Alex Jarbeau, who we hope to have on our show eventually. And he's one person who, if you've ever met somebody who loves yoga and loves talking about yoga, it's Alex. So hi, Alex. And so we talked, and that was the beginning of the end. It was like, you could feel these people's energy and knew that this was the right process. And fast forward 2 years later is really how long it took. By the time, you got
I believe it.
leases and constructions and
Yeah.
pre-sale and hiring and marketing and all these different dynamics. And then September 16th, 2017, right? We opened our doors. And so that was almost a year ago.
Wow. It's only been a year.
Yeah, in cat years, that's like.
I think it aged me a few. I got my first gray hairs this year. We're just working our butts off.
Yeah.
And because we love what we
love
do.
it.
We love what we do. We love you guys and students and.
Well, why go with a franchise instead of trying to do your own thing?
Yeah, that's a great.
Because there's so many independent
Yeah.
studios around and in Fort Collins. It seems like get a spot,
Open
put in
up.
some
Just
put
throw
in
up
some
some
locker
mirrors.
rooms,
Yeah.
buy a couple ads, you're good to go.
Can, if only it was
I'm
that
totally
easy.
kidding. I am 100% kidding.
So, there's the most important thing for me was I wanted to teach. I wanted to interact with people. I wanted to talk to our students. And there's so much complexity around things like creating a brand, trademarking
sure.
a logo,
Oh yeah.
creating taglines.
Mhm.
You guys, a teacher training manual is like, how many pages is our teacher training manual?
Gosh, I don't even know, hundreds.
Hundreds of pages. So to create all these assets
hmm
and do all that, we're of course more than capable
Yeah.
of doing that. But the
Yeah.
amount of time invested
So daunting.
to
Yeah.
create all that, we're like,
Oh yeah.
I just want to have all this, ready for me, and then turn around and focus on the experience. Because in Fort Collins, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a yoga studio or fitness
Right,
studio.
Why are you killing the cat?
This is
I don't.
There's your second cat reference. I'm just saying, who's the crazy cat lady?
That's true. Jana's rubbing off on me. So it's like,
Yeah, there's a ton of
there's
studios.
there's so much. So what's unique about us is, and I think all the yoga pods and any studio is going to be the student experience. So
Mhm.
from that initial contact, look at all of our first class stories.
Mhm.
How do we make sure that student has a great experience? And so I just wanted to be able to like put it up and execute on it better than, you know, anyone else.
Yeah.
Well, and we were both working full time at the
Mhm.
time. So, you know, to think about doing all of that without the support of a brand was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
It's
insane
tough.
anyway, but
And the financial investment too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
when you look at, you know, we had to take out, you know, loans, of course, you know, to get the
Mhm.
studio. And so when you have an established brand, you know, the Small Business Administration, the SBA looks at things like that. And
For
they're,
sure.
you know, they want to look at data and know,
Mhm.
hey, this has been done before, and you have the support from
sure.
other people. So that was another pro to going with the franchise.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and what's funny is because, I mean, I guess I'm somewhat of an entrepreneur. I've owned several businesses and been involved in a bunch of different projects over the years. And so from an outside perspective, like when I think we drove by before it had even opened or whatever, and Mary was like, "Oh yeah, it's going to be in like outside where the new mall is," and I'm like, who's going to even go to the mall?
Mary was our first member.
Yeah,
side
she
note.
was.
Was she?
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. She was so excited about it. I remember her telling me about it. And I'm like, who? Like that just seems like such a. At the time, I was like, it seems like such a weird location. Like everything's going on in Harmony.
Mhm.
Like, why wouldn't you go out that way? There's so much more like new construction. And then, even though it's like so close to my house, but then I started thinking about it and how like central it is. Like it's really like equidistant
Yeah.
from pretty much any, you know, if you're in
Everywhere.
Old Town or you're in Harmony or whatever, it's like right in the center. But then I also like when I came in compared to the studios that I'd gone to. And so when I travel, I try to go to Bikram studios or I used to,
Yeah.
because it's great to just kind of keep in the rhythm of things and not, you know, you end up sitting so much when you're traveling and my back hurts and whatever. So I try to go to a lot of studios and I've never been to one as nice as yours.
Oh.
It's true. I mean, and the lavender towels that you use are hot is like, that was like the cherry on top for sure.
For those of you who don't know, if you take one of our pod hoc classes at the end, the teacher will place a chilled lavender towel in your hand that you can then
It's the
like
best.
put on your
Slice
face
of heaven.
or your chest, and it's literally like, yeah, you have an out of body experience because you've just been so hot.
Yeah, but it's those little things that you all recognize or pod, you know, Yoga Pod as a brand recognize that make it, I think, unique and different, you know?
And you know what I love too is that, you know, we're really empowered to create our own experience as well within that brand. That, you know, there's a lot of franchises that are very specific about you can only do X, Y, and Z, and you have to sell this, and this is the way you have to do it. And we've really been empowered to be entrepreneurs along with, you know, following the structure.
Sure.
So we have this support, but like Fort Collins is a unique community. You know, there's a lot of highly educated people. There's a lot of people that are part of the university, a lot of medical professionals, a lot of tech people. And so it's like they might need a different experience than a studio in another part of the state or part of the country. And so for us putting together these strategies and then, you know, going back to headquarters and saying, hey, what do you think about this? I think that's a big misconception is that we're handed all this stuff on a silver platter and say, do this. It's our leadership team. And we have several assistant managers. We have a lead teacher. We have, you know, Jana, our manager, and we sit down and we put in a lot of hours coming up with things that make sense in our community and executing on those.
Yeah. Like this.
Like a podcast.
Exactly like this. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have
Makes total sense.
So yeah, I mean, so it's all these things like that it's sometimes can, you know, can seem easy on the outside, but anytime somebody's an expert, right, they make it look easy, you know.
Nobody saw us crying from 2 to 3 at the
When there's
dead
no
hours in the
classes.
studio the first 6 months.
Nobody saw
Where's
that.
everybody. Yeah.
But you know, like, you know, Peyton Manning, when he steps on the field, you know, he makes it look easy. Like anybody, like I could totally quarterback for the Broncos, no problem. And then you pick up the ball and it's a different story. And I think that's the same thing here is we want to make it look easy. And no one knows the amount of time we've invested in the background.
So you both mentioned food.
My belly's growling, so sorry. Pick that up on the mic.
That's okay. But it's one of the weird things that I wouldn't say I've become obsessed with, but I'm curious, what do you guys do before you do yoga? Do you eat, drink anything before, and depending on the class, does it vary?
Yeah, I think it varies depending on the class. I eat more than she does. I think I snack all day long. And so I know that if I don't have a snack like 30 minutes before like a heated class, that I'm going to get nauseous and lightheaded.
Yeah.
Jenna had a McRib the other day.
Oh, totally.
For right before hot,
A
didn't
Nick
you?
Fib.
She loves a good
Jana
McRib pre-hot yoga.
Jana does not eat McDonald's or meat. No, yeah, I think, but before a hot class, when we took that traditional hot class that Danielle taught, she said, have a snack like 2 hours before, and then make sure you hydrate. And so I did that. I followed her instructions, and I actually felt really great. I felt like not hungry. I didn't feel nauseous. It was kind of the same thing I did for the sweat lodge.
Oh yeah,
Snack and lots of water.
Yeah.
So me, yes, most of the time I am eating.
Yeah.
Unless it's hot.
Yeah. Any caffeine or anything beforehand?
I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning.
Okay.
That's all I allow myself, because then I get like real shaky.
So, I think the best thing right before you practice is a little Jack Daniels mixed with your coffee. And that's where I found the best.
That's terrible advice.
Experience.
Do not listen to her. She is not the Peyton Manning of
Peyton Manning does the same thing before he goes on the field. We'll have him on the podcast. No, I'm just kidding. So, it's interesting because for me, it's my prime time to practice is like 9 a.m. Simply because I don't like to eat a lot before I practice. I might have like a little protein shake or something like that, but all this like engagement through your core and bandha engagement, it'll make me feel nauseous to even have any like anything. So I think that's why I don't really like to practice later in the day, because by then I'm like, I might eat a McRib even though I don't eat pork.
Like what you ingest too. This one time I ate a green chili tamale, and then I went to a heated vinyasa class, and I puked in my mouth.
There we go. We just had the first puke
in
story.
down dog,
Awesome.
and I was like,
Did you swallow it?
Oh, I
again then?
swallowed it. What are you gonna do? Yes. And then I
That's
finished
so
the
gross.
class. So don't eat green chili tamales. That's my
man.
suggestion. What about you?
I try to practice first thing in the morning, so I don't eat before I go. And then if I go to like a 7:30 hot class, I'll have like a cup of mate or something like that and some water. But I try to stay away from coffee beforehand, like right
mate?
beforehand.
How hip of you, Ken?
What's
I'm just gonna have my
It's like a South American like hippie drink.
Okay, like yerba mate?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know what that is.
Yeah, I'm like, you're super hippie. How could you not know what that is?
Maybe
What's
you
going
never
on here?
heard it like the slang
mate.
mate.
Maybe one day you'll be as
Mate.
cool as Ken and just call it mate.
Mate.
I just only
I
drink
don't know.
tea.
Yeah, I only drink tea that's anyway. And yeah, that's kind of, and then
That's what you
if I do a class in the afternoon, I'll have breakfast, but then I won't eat until after I go practice.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I feel like, but I feel like some fruit or something like
Something
that
light.
works.
Yeah.
But
Something
yeah, having
hydrating.
like I've definitely like eaten a full meal and then tried
And
to go
then
practice.
practice. It's not fun.
It's just not, and I don't think it's productive because you end up like concentrating on that because of the way that you're feeling, and you're just like,
Food makes a big difference.
agreed.
Food's something I'm super passionate about, just nutrition and the way I eat and like
Sure.
mindful eating.
Any supplements? You take any supplements?
I do actually. Well, my Lisa and I just did this 10-day cleanse. Did
Yeah,
we
we
tell you about that? Not just. We did it in June.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was super intense, designed to like rid your body of like GMOs and pesticides and all this stuff.
All that Roundup. All that
yeah, all
Roundup
that
just built up in us.
Yeah, and it does. It makes you, when your body's toxic, it makes you retain fat. So
Sure.
the whole premise is to release the toxins. And so I used to do a lot of supplements. I was just telling some people last night that I like overdosed on D3 for like a solid year. You guys.
How do you know you were overdosing?
Oh, I was taking so much D3, and my friend Brady was too, and we were laughing about this just last night because we were having like these crazy night sweats, like acne, weight gain, all this stuff. And then through a naturopath, when she found out how much we were taking, she was like, oh, no. And so after that incident, I quit supplementing altogether. But now I've incorporated back in like a probiotic and green shakes and amino acids. And I think that's pretty much all I take.
No, do you do a bunch of supplements? Some supplements?
No, we did the cleanse where you start out with amino acids in the morning.
Which I don't even know what they are. I just take them.
Yeah, I don't know. Janice,
Is
what
it
do
a
you
pill?
take them?
Yeah, we call them cocaine pills because when you pour them in your hand, they leave this white residue. But I think they're a form of protein. And I think they have enzymes in them that
We need to get somebody who knows
Yeah,
what
we'll
they're
get-
talking
we'll
about
get
here.
into that.
Dr. Kim Bruna.
Yeah.
She needs to.
Or my wife,
Talk
she
to
would
us.
probably
Or
be able.
Mary,
She
yeah.
would probably be able to expound upon
Yeah.
amino acids and their
But at the end,
usefulness.
I felt great. I mean, we felt
Yeah.
great. And the 10-day cleanse is fascinating because you can eat. I mean, you're encouraged to eat. It's not about like
Oh, okay.
starvation.
Yeah.
Which, side note, yogis for thousands of years have been starving themselves to get
Fasting.
high. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's a whole
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I can go like 3 hours without eating before things get crazy.
I know that.
But I felt so good. And so when you're on this cleanse, you eat, but it's the type of foods that you're eating.
Mhm.
So you really do, I mean, like, it was really difficult to not just go to your habits, and just
Sure.
eat whatever was
Tortilla
comfortable.
chips.
Yeah, dude, I
It's
love
my
a chip.
downfall every
So
time.
good.
Chips.
Mhm.
And so after you emerge, and so you kind of start to eliminate these things from your diet, and it changes the way you think. But there were some rough days in there where it wasn't pretty for anyone,
Yeah.
for the two of us to function.
Yeah, I've
You've done some.
done
intense
some serious
fasting.
fasting.
Tell
Yeah.
us about it, Ken.
It's more so I've gone 4 days without any food or water.
What's
No
that
food or
like?
water?
It's transformational. I don't recommend it for anyone out there, by the way. Like
Just-
Well,
Disclaimer.
not
Unless-
without supervision
not
and
without some
experience.
major
but
supervision. But yeah, it's
what's the premise behind it for you?
because you realize like afterwards that they're like the only things that are really important are food, water, and your family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Well,
Nothing else is important.
yeah.
And you like when you get to that place, because it takes first 2 days are awful. Maybe awful's maybe a bit of a stretch, but
Unpleasant.
it's difficult. You think about it more than you probably should in
Mhm.
somebody like me who's maybe a little obsessive at times. It's probably a little worse. But it's very instructive. And so I'll do like 18-hour fast, like before, like after I'll have like an early dinner, and then I won't have eaten until, because I feel like that allows your body to kind of reset sometimes. And it seems helpful. So, and then, I've done like 2-day fasts, like by myself in the middle of nowhere. And that's a whole nother
Just in the
thing
middle
as
of
well.
nowhere.
Yeah. That's
I mean, you
whole
have
nother
like a
thing as well.
tent?
So what do you
Sleeping
do
bag.
for the 2 days?
Pray pretty much that you don't die. Yeah.
Yeah. And who are you
Yeah.
praying to during this time?
It depends. I mean, so like everybody has their own conception or whatever, and I have mine, and it's, nature,
Mm-hmm.
Mother Earth, Great
Yeah.
Spirit, however you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, wow, these are not questions I expected.
I mean, you
Anyway.
never know where
Digging
this is
deep,
gonna go. You
Digging
never know
deep.
where it's gonna go. But it's so interesting
No, but
to hear
yeah.
that, because I think for me, the thought of going without food and water for 4 days, I'm like, oh, I'll die for sure.
Yeah,
Like,
you
I'm
won't.
for sure. But that cleanse, what it taught me is that food is such a distraction sometimes. Like it just pulls me away from the important things. And I think, you know, the intermittent fasting, the 12 to 18 hours can be so good for the body. Because I mean, I think about food all the time.
You know, I'm thinking about it right now.
Me too. I have been this whole podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
You guys weren't even present? It's our
No,
first
I mean,
podcast, and all you
I
guys
was,
are
but my
thinking about.
stomach was
Ken, we're women. We can multitask. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, and so here, you know, Ken was kind enough to allow Jenna and I to come with him to a sweat lodge ceremony.
I didn't allow you, but yes.
No, I mean, you
invited
Yeah.
us.
yeah, if we were a hot mess, you wouldn't have let us come. So, I mean, there was
That's true.
some permission. So, Ken, can you share about like how you found the sweat lodge and how you've been drawn to the Native American culture?
Yeah, this is something I don't talk about in public. So I guess when I was 18, I had a kind of a major transformation in my life where I realized there were a bunch of things that I was doing that were not serving me, that were getting me in a lot of trouble with various organizations,
like
the law.
Like, okay,
and-
maybe the big one.
yeah. And so, and at the time I was actually in a high school and there was a Native American Studies class and I took it. And one of the things they talked about there was kind of a coming of age ceremony that they do, or that's how it was kind of specified to me at that time. I've learned later, not 100% true, but so it was a vision quest, and I went on this vision quest. I use those because it was, I guess, what I needed at the time. But it was, when I look back on it now, I'm like, maybe not a great idea, because nobody knew where I was. I decided the best thing for me to do was to go. So I think I was somewhere in New Hampshire. But nobody knew where I was.
So Vision Quest, you just leave on your own.
You leave on your own and you just go with no food, no water, and you basically pray, you know, for up to 4 days. And I think I lasted a day and a night, maybe. But I decided to set up in the middle. So there was a river and there was like this little island in the middle of the river. And I decided that was going to be the best place for me to set up, which if it rained,
You were done.
probably wouldn't have been great.
Floating tent.
But it served its purpose at that point. And then, and that's, I was living on the East Coast then, and then I moved to Colorado, and immediately, or more or less immediately, met somebody who invited me to a sweat lodge that was like a very temporary one set up on the banks of the Poudre River over by, what is that? Shields and the nature trail. Like totally on public
Just right
property.
there,
Yeah,
wow.
just not even.
Those are dead fishes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so random. And it just kind of changed everything. So that was, and it's certainly not for everyone by any means. But it's given me some direction and purpose, and it's been really helpful. So, and to people who say like, oh, I could never do that or whatever. My kid, who's 12 now, I think he went to his first one when he was 8, which people might consider torture. But he wanted to do it. Like, I wasn't like, hey, you're going in there and you can't leave.
You're not coming
I'm
out.
like you can leave whenever you want and do, like it doesn't, you don't have to be here. And he's like, no. And he likes it. He goes and does it. And so if, an 8-year-old kid can do it, anybody can do it.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like kids are amazing because they can really do anything. No, we did it. We managed to be in there the whole time, but it was
Intense.
But so are,
so intense.
yeah, but women are as well, in the sense that like men never have to give birth.
Yeah.
Right? Like that doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
I mean,
And
have
so,
you seen what's the Danny DeVito and Schwarzenegger? Wait,
9 months.
yeah, where
definitely.
Schwarzenegger gets pregnant.
I'm not going to watch that.
Okay,
I'm
well,
sorry.
I'm just saying that's the one exception. He gives birth.
I'm not going to watch
Okay,
that.
go ahead.
but what I've seen, at least historically, is that guys in general are terrible at letting go.
Yeah.
And the
Yep.
only way that you get through any of those things, and this includes, and it really does kind of come back to yoga, is that includes like a really hot yoga class or a really, difficult kind of sequence, whatever it may be. I don't know if it's called a sequence, but whatever.
Yeah, it is. You're doing great.
You're already
Is-
a yoga teacher.
Is by giving up.
Yeah.
You got to surrender. Like that is,
It's
and
so
that's,
true.
there's, somebody out there who said, you got to surrender to win.
Yeah.
And
You gotta let go.
it's, once that, I think that's a huge part of life is figuring out like how to let go
How to let go.
That's so
of
huge.
emotions, of thoughts, of
Control.
control, like
Well, and we
the
haven't
what
talked
ifs,
about it.
we've got a lot more hours to go
Oh,
on
we
these,
totally.
so
But in the theme of it, we never really got back together after
Yeah.
the sweat lodge. My niece and I shared our experience together,
Sure.
but I can't remember. So for those of you that have never done it, they all follow somewhat of a pattern where you're doing like rounds.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe in like the third round
healing round.
that I just had this overwhelming message come to me, and it was just like clear as day, and it just said, you hold on to way too much. And I was just like, okay. All right. And so that was the ultimate message from that sweat lodge, was just like, just stop, just relax, let it go. And I'm trying to do that every day, but it's
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah. Well, what I found was that a lot of those kind of prayers or intentions, that kind of come to us in that second round or, that time in our life, they're always answered, right? But it's not usually in the way that we think or in the time frame or what, like it could be on your deathbed,
Yeah.
But at least what I've found is that when that intention is put out there in, I'm not just like making things up in my head, but there's some sort of divine intervention or however you want to put it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too like out there, but
Please go there.
I
I love a good out there.
but that there are always those, those prayers, those intentions are always answered.
Yeah,
you
in
know,
one way or another.
In one way or another.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's not necessarily always in the time frame. Yeah.
You have to be patient.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the same with a yoga class. A yoga class is a life cycle.
Mhm.
You begin in one way and you end on the floor, and you're setting intentions and you're releasing, and especially in a hot, any type of hot class. It's the same concept, which I don't know that I could have done a sweat lodge prior to finding yoga. But it's that same, you are born, you die, you're reborn
Sure.
situation that's
Mhm.
happening in a yoga class. So
Well, I think it was fascinating being in the sweat lodge because, first of all, I got to paint a picture because we go into Denver and Ken didn't give us a whole lot of information
He
on
gave us
purpose.
none for a reason.
Yeah, and it's great, right? Because then you get to make your own,
Yeah.
form your own opinions.
Everybody has their own experience
Their own
anyways, so it
experience.
doesn't matter.
So first and foremost, we don't want to embarrass Ken because it's like, we don't want to do something wrong.
So not
it's-
even something I thought about.
I know.
Okay.
Well,
Something we
his-
thought about.
Yeah.
something we totally thought about because it's very ceremonial, and I thought a lot about like golf is kind of similar where you don't want to do something wrong and like you're supposed to hit the ball in this order and all these things
So
like
many
that, and you're
rules.
supposed to wear the
Mhm.
right outfit, and that's part of the etiquette, right?
Mhm.
So that was the first thing I thought about with the sweat lodge is like, what's the right etiquette? So we're not embarrassing Ken. And so, first of all, you have to wear a sweat lodge dress.
Yeah,
A lodge dress.
It's basically like a potato sack.
It's like a potato sack.
They're very colorful.
Yeah, so, but you don't you just don't walk up and like put on the lodge dress. It's like a whole process. So there's like this pit dug in the ground, and there's one dude in charge of like getting the stones hot. And there's like, you can only go clockwise around the stones that are being heated.
Mhm.
And then when you go into the sweat lodge, you get down on all fours, and it's like this hut that's been insulated.
It's like a womb.
It is. It's
Mhm.
exactly. It's totally a
It's
womb.
meant to be a womb, right?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Yeah. It's called a hachoko, which just
Okay,
means like
that's what
a
I was
sacred
going.
stake, but it's also in nipi, like that's
Yeah.
the actual structure, but it's actually, so it's not just above the ground, it actually goes below. Like that's, I mean, not realist, not in real life, but that's the
It's like a
idea is
circle
that you're they're
above.
like in this sphere, of half earth, half sky.
I mean, it
You're
felt
in it.
like a womb.
It sure
half
did.
Earth.
Yeah.
And so you crawl in, and you have to go again clockwise, right?
Mhm.
In and
Women first.
women go in first, and I mean, there was how many people in this space with
There
us?
was a lot.
Probably 25 or 30.
Yeah, like a
And
lot
it's
of
not big. I
No.
envisioned something large, but it's not.
it's this tiny space, and
It's like 10 by, it's about 10 feet maybe wide.
and you get in, and I mean, you're in. Like, if you were to get out, there's 7 people between you and the door that you would literally have to crawl over their laps in your sweat lodge dress and your lodge
Oh,
Oh,
dress.
people have done it.
Yeah, but again, we don't
Trust me.
we don't want to embarrass Ken, and so you go in, and so and this all relates back to yoga, because yoga, for those of you who don't know, is not just the physical asana practice, which asana is like the physical posture
Mhm.
pose. There's 8 limbs of yoga, and the other 7 are ways of living life, or ways to approach situations, and it's a mental yoga, and I think that's what people don't even know, and it's not a religion, which I think we should clarify that.
For sure.
You can be a Christian and you can love God, and I do consider myself a Christian, but I don't go to church, and that's a whole nother story. But anyways, so you have this mental thing, so this was a mental experience for me. So you go in, and I'm doing my yoga, right? I'm like,
Sure.
I'm coming back to the present moment, and yoga teaches you to you're not worrying about the future.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about the past, and you're just there in the moment, and that's all you can control,
Mhm.
and that's the only thing you can influence. And so we're trapped in the back, okay? And there's all these people that obviously seem like they know what they're doing.
Mhm.
And Ken's already in deep. You can see it in his eyes. He's just
He checked on us a few times.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I noticed.
and
He's like, are they alive?
Yeah.
they close this flap, and there's hot stones in the middle, and there's the man who pours water.
Mhm.
And so as he pours water, it's the same idea of like a sauna, or so the more water on it, the hotter it gets, and so it's pitch black, like you cannot see anything. And in that moment, the heat begins to rise, and the music, singing starts,
And the drumming.
and the
Mhm.
drumming. And so it's just this intense feeling that you want to escape. Your senses say, get out.
Oh, for sure.
It's too hot. There's
Yeah.
music.
Like you're fine.
Yeah.
But your body is like fight or flight. Like
Right.
it's time to go. Something weird's
Mhm.
happening, and
Yep.
yeah.
And so it's fascinating, because at that moment, the only thing you have is control over your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, just right there. So how do you
Mhm.
tell yourself, stay in it,
Mhm.
be fine with it?
Sure.
So, and this all relates back to yoga, because there's so many times in a class where it's hard. I'm like, I can't lift my leg any higher, I can't stay in this posture anymore.
Mhm.
And it's that same mentality of stay on your mat,
Mhm.
stay in it, you're going to be okay.
Mhm. Do you guys have any mantras that you use while you're practicing? And then we can end on that. We're
Yeah.
an hour and 15 in,
Oh man.
by the way. And I don't even know how long this is supposed
We
to be,
like
or
to
where
talk.
you're supposed to
This
be.
is fine.
Okay.
We're,
I don't know if you
good.
guys have appointments at 9:30 or 10:30 that you're like,
Nope.
we gotta
I'm
go.
just an appointment with something to eat. So
Just
that's
a big
fine.
plate of something.
Mantras. I don't have any set mantras, like no Sanskrit terminology that I use when I practice. But I do always step onto my mat with some sort of intention,
Mhm.
something to let go of, something to manifest, or if there's somebody in my life that needs some good energy, I'll dedicate my practice to them, or something out in the world, I'll dedicate
Mhm.
my practice to that. It helps me stay more present, especially when you give it up to somebody else, or you give it up to something, because it's no longer a selfish thing. Like, you're practicing compassion. And I remember with the sweat lodge, I think you were telling us, like, or maybe Mary or somebody was saying, Mary's Ken's wife, by the way, saying, if it gets too difficult, just do it for somebody else.
Yeah, just pray for someone else. Yeah.
And so, yeah, always an intention. What about you?
Oh man, there's just so many that I've been working through right now. If you something I've really been attached to is, if something's heavy, choose not to carry it around. You know, because we have all of these emotions and things that we become attached to, these stories, and you know, if that's weighing on you, then don't carry it. And acknowledge that you're going to have these sensations as you go through life and as you go through your practice, and that you don't have to make the decision to continue to hold on to that. And that's what I've really been working through right now.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of got to the point, especially with Bikram, doing the exact same, where it was really easy to let my mind wander and become unfocused. And then for me, it's like, it's not like a useless practice by any means, but it's not the reason why I was going there, you know? And so I have, and of course I can't remember the guy's name, really popular guy who comes up with great stuff to say.
Deepak Chopra.
Yes, there we go. Jeez.
Winner.
Terrible.
Really
memory.
popular guy that comes
Really
up with
popular
good
guys,
stuff to
great
say.
stuff to say. So he has these like 4 things that, mantras that,
Yeah, he has good mantras.
and so the first one is joyful, energetic body. And so when I'm going, like, if I have a posture, like, that's what I say the entire time. And I'm just like, that just like going through my head the entire time. And then loving and compassionate heart. So like I get to the next posture, and that's like where I'm at. So literally, like when I'm doing breathing, like
That's what you're doing.
joyful, energetic body, when, you know, when we go into our first, you know, whatever that is.
Whatever this guy is.
Half moon, exactly. Yeah.
That's
I'll pay
neat.
attention.
I love
And then reflective, alert mind is the third one, which I don't know if it serves me really well, because I think I'm way too reflective. So I've been trying to kind of tweak that one.
Yeah.
You seem pretty alert as well.
Yeah, fairly alert. So I'm trying to kind of tweak that one to be a little more, just have a more compassionate mind, I think, and towards myself and others. And then lightness of being. So, and it works really well for me, because like by the time you get to eagle, it's lightness of being. It's like, that's
You're flying.
perfect, right?
Soaring.
And then you just start over again. And so for me, it just takes away all of the chatter. And so in the same sense as like lodge, because I know the song is there and like kind of what's going on, it would be really easy for me to get kind of distracted. And so it's the same sort of thing where I can kind of concentrate on those songs and what is going on, and then I don't get, and so it's almost like forced meditation. You know, because for me, sitting, like I can do seated meditation, but it's very difficult for me. And so it's just kind of that forced meditation where, and it definitely serves me well.
Yeah. Well, and distraction is suffering. I mean, if I'm distracted on my mat, I'm not in it. Deepak also has some really good mantras for meditation that you can repeat in your mind while you meditate, and that works really well for me too, because I feel like I'm thinking all the time. So yeah, neat.
Awesome.
Cool. It's great.
We're almost an hour and 20 in. If anybody's stuck in there the whole time,
We love you.
thanks. If you happen to watch this later, feel free to share it, because it's going to be up on the Yoga Pod
Did we have
Facebook
any comments?
forever. Oh yeah, we do.
Aw.
Hi, Edna, Kristen, Cassie.
Well, she could like these right
Megan,
Mm-hmm.
so happy you could hop on.
Yeah.
Vanessa, we love her. She's another one of our assistant managers.
now. Awesome. Well, thanks
Cool.
everyone.
Yeah.
And we will be
Back on Friday.
back on Friday with Kyle,
Yep,
Kyle.
Kyle.
which is going to be great.
Good story.
I'm
Yeah,
excited.
he's-
Yeah, I'm excited to hear his story. And who
I'll be here.
he'll be
Miley's.
here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just talking yoga
Awesome.
with two tattooed dudes talking yoga.
Well, and so the format of this, because we just kind of jumped into it. So the
Yeah.
idea would be that most likely I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be
One of us.
one of you and then a guest.
Yep.
We
And
might
then
do a call in
sometimes
every
all of
now and then,
us.
or all of us. And we're more than willing to hear kind of suggestions from people
Mhm.
about
What you
anything that you might want to see or things that you want to hear more about, that sort of thing.
Yay.
We love it.
Right.
We're just so honored to be here, and man, we could talk about yoga all day long because really, anything is yoga. So it's just talking about life, and we hope to answer any questions and inspire people to step on their mat and join us on this magical journey.
For sure. Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thanks.